Hi everyone and welcome. Today we'll explore how different HASS disciplines, specifically history and geography, help us think about the world. We'll look at how each discipline builds knowledge, the skills and methods they use, and the lens that shape interpretation. Then I'll connect this to the curriculum documents like the Australian Curriculum version 9 and the New South Wales HSIE syllabus. Along the way, I'll also look at some debates, especially around Indigenous and Global South perspectives, and whose knowledge is included or excluded in these frameworks. Historians deal with knowledge and understanding, the themes, people, and events of the past. This could be the Civil War, colonial Australia, or the Second World War. Without this knowledge, there's nothing to analyse. But history isn't just about memorising facts. Historians also rely on methods and skills. They ask big questions, search archives, analyse source, compare accounts, and interpret evidence. Their work can involve oral testimony, archaeology, quantitative data, or even digital tools like mapping and text mining. And importantly, history is always shaped by theoretical and conceptual lens. Feminist historians ask how women's voices were overlooked. Post-colonial historians interrogate the legacy of empires and silences in the archives. Marxist historians focus on class struggle and economics. Cultural historians look at meaning and symbols, while postmodern challenge the idea of one single true narrative. As Rasan pointed out in Western historical thinking, the very notion of historically rational is culturally situated. Western tradition often emphasise linear chronology, evidence-based reconstruction and progress, but these are not universal. Indigenous and non-Western traditions may frame time clinically or prioritise oral and cultural memory. This reveals that disciplinary thinking in history always involves context, epistemology, not neutral rules. So, in history, we see an interplay of content, methods and lens, knowledge, skills and interpretation. Geography also builds knowledge and understanding, but theirs is about the world's physical and human systems. Think of landforms, migration, climate change, urbanization, or sustainability. Their methods and skills are practical and data-driven. Fieldwork, mapping, GIS, remote sensing, statistical analysis, and interviews. Geographers are skilled at representing data visually through maps, graphs, and models. And they use their own conceptual lens, spatial thinking, environmental thinking, systems thinking, place-based thinking, and scale switching. They ask questions like, where is this? Why here and not there? How are human and physical processes connected? Hubbard, Bartley, Fuller, and Kitchen, in Thinking Geographically, remind us that geography is not just about describing the world, but about theorizing how space is socially produced. Space and place are not neutral. They are shaped by power, identity, and discourse. Geographers therefore investigate not just where things are, but how meaning of space are constructed and contested. Geographers also focus on ethical concepts like sustainability and human well-being, which guides thinking about the future we're shaping. Both history and geography are forms of inquiry. Both require analysing evidence, weighing perspectives, and applying concepts. But their focus differs. Historians think through time, what has changed, and why, while geographers think through space, where and how processes are distributed. Historians often use narrative to make sense of the past, while geographers rely on maps and spatial models. As we can see here in the New South Wales Geography 7 to 10 framework, disciplinary thinking is structured around three key pillars: geographical concepts, inquiry skills, and tools. Students explore topics such as landscapes and landforms, water in the world, and human well-being, all through the process of thinking and working geographically. This design reflects one of the curriculum's strengths. It clearly promotes inquiry-based learning. Students aren't just memorizing facts about locations or environment, they're developing conceptual understanding about space, place, and interconnection, and learning how to apply geographical tools to real-world issues like sustainability and resource management. In the History 7 to 10 framework, we see a similar emphasis on disciplinary thinking. The structure builds on historical understanding through concepts, context, and skills. Students learn to question source, recognize continuity and change, and interpret multiple perspectives. This is an explicit inclusion of Aboriginal people experience of colonisation in Stage 4, which is an important acknowledgement of Australians' history. However, this content sits with a Western historical timeline, the ancient past, the medieval world, the era of colonisation, and the modern world. So while Aboriginal perspectives are represented, the disciplinary structure itself remains Eurocentric, grounded in linear notions of time and evidence that privilege written records over oral, embedded, or spatial forms of knowledge. The New South Wales learning area does include Aboriginal studies as a separate subject, which is a positive recognition that Indigenous knowledge systems deserve dedicated space within the curriculum. However, in practice, this subject often sits alongside history and geography rather than being embedded within them. This separation creates a subtle but significant divide. It suggests that Aboriginal perspectives are something to be added to the main curriculum rather than something that could reshape the discipline approach themselves. For instance, teachers might include a lesson on Aboriginal land management in geography or on colonisation in history, but the underlying frameworks, linear time, European mapping conventions, and text-based evidence usually remain unchanged. This means Indigenous knowledge often operates as content, not as methodological framework that drives inquiry. Imagine if the curriculum went further. In history, country could be recognised as an archive where stories, artefacts, and landscapes together hold historical evidence. In geography, songlines could inform how we understand space, navigate, and spatial relationship, connecting people, land, and stories across time. These approaches would not only enrich disciplinary thinking, but also challenge the dominance of Western epistemologies that separate people from place. To move forward, we need to see Aboriginal studies not as an extra subject, but as a foundational way of knowing that informs all HSIE learning. Embedding Indigenous epistemologies like clinical time, country as knowledge, and storytelling as evidence would transform how inquiry is framed. It would help students understand that knowledge is not just built through documents and data, but through relationship, experiments, and interconnection. This shift also invites students to think critically about whose knowledge counts in the curriculum, and how certain ways of knowing have been privileged or silenced. By integrating Indigenous and non-Western epistemologies, we can create a HASS curriculum that is not only more inclusive, but also more intellectually rigorous. One of the values multiple perspectives as essential to understanding the world. So while history and geography already teach students to think critically about evidence, continuity, and perspective, a truly transforming curriculum would extend this further. It would position Indigenous and Global South knowledge systems as core components of disciplinary thinking, not as add-ons, but as equally valid frameworks that shape how we understand time, space, and place. Thanks for watching, and I hope this has helped you see how curriculum structures, like the HSIE syllabus, don't just organise content, they also reflect deeper questions about knowledge, power, and whose voices shape the way we teach and learn.